Welcome, everyone. Today, I get to talk to Senator Angela Alsobrooks, who is a junior U.S. Senator from Maryland, also where I live, and I'm very proud to have voted for her. So, Senator, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for having me today. I appreciate it.
No, we're thrilled. So, Senator, I know how busy you are, especially right now. So, I kind of just want to dive right in and talk about how you see the current actions of the Trump-Vance administration impacting our U.S. food and agriculture systems and also the health of our citizens.
Well, this is a really scary time. I have to tell you, I've had, unfortunately, the opportunity to talk with on a number of occasions our Secretary of Health and Human Services, RFK Jr. In fact, I spoke with him prior to his confirmation, and I think, unfortunately, many of my fears have really come to fruition in that he has, first of all, made these very indiscriminate cuts and freezes of federal funding. The cuts, I am so clear now,
Mhm.
especially after my hearing with him last week, that he has absolutely no idea about the nature of many of the cuts. He could not answer, for example, very specific questions
Mm.
about not only the cuts, but the reasoning behind the cuts. And I'm convinced he doesn't care. And I think that's the most frightening part of it all. And the reality is, many of the cuts that he has made are ones that will have not only very devastating impacts in today or on today, but they will go so far into the future. I think it's hard for us to even know the exact harm that will be done and how long it will take for us to roll it back. And I mean cuts, for example, to really critical professionals,
Mhm.
scientists, researchers, doctors, and others who are the most well qualified people in the country, from NIH, John Hopkins, other places, and these people are seeing cuts to funding and job cuts.
This lack of science or interest in science-based evidence is really concerning. What have you heard from folks at Health and Human Services about, the changes there and sort of, leaving science behind?
Well, you know what? I've heard a word that has been routinely used, and that word is chaos. That there's a real sense of destabilization, chaos, and even cruelty
Hmm.
that I think has been very intentional. I've talked to individuals. I had a sick of it rally just a couple of weeks ago. I couldn't think of any more distinguished way to describe what I think we're all feeling. And so we called it sick of it. But I had a number of people come from Health and Human Services, some of whom had to disguise their appearance. They
Wow.
were afraid to
Right.
even come out and speak in public, who described the limiting of supplies that there is now because of this, again, misguided
Hmm.
cutting of funding, that many of the scientists there don't have the supplies that they need. I even heard one story where it's so scarce that they are cutting in half paper towels
Wow.
because they don't even have the supplies that they need.
Right.
And so, this is what I'm hearing is the chaos of not knowing from one day to the next whether or not your employment will be cut short. I've heard they're so cruel. They're allowing people in some instances to show up at these buildings to try to swipe a key fob, and that's how you learn whether or not you've been terminated, is
Wow.
whether or not it works. And when you click your computer on, you have to wonder to yourself whether or not this is the day you'll be notified upon arrival that you're going to be terminated. And so this is an environment which is not done, by the way, in the interest of efficiency, because if it were the case, we wouldn't fire
Right.
the people that we're seeing. And he made a misrepresentation and said that working scientists have not been fired, which of course is totally untrue.
Right.
Totally untrue.
So chaos, cruelty, fear, lies. This is not efficient in so many ways. Senator, I will tell you, as someone who has worked in food and agriculture for 20 plus years now, I am surprised by the number of colleagues that I have who are excited about RFK Jr. and his focus on, removing food additives and, his interest in removing pesticides. Are these benefits that he's sort of presenting worth recognizing? Do you think he'll follow through on some of these claims? It's disturbing to me. I have to be very honest with you.
Well, you know what? I'll say it this way. My father used to say to me that even a broken clock is right twice a day. To mean that I don't discount the fact that there may be a theory or two espoused by RFK Jr. that will make sense. I think it would be intellectually dishonest of me to say that absolutely nothing he says is worth considering. But
Sure.
much of it is just talk. And I think that's the misfortune of all of this is that all of this tough talk, I'd be very surprised if we see any of it materialize in a way that benefits the people. And so that really is the great concern. It takes so little to break something.
Right.
And we all know how much more it takes, how much more energy, intellect, and commitment it takes to build something. All I have heard of so far from him is what he intends to break, which is consistent with this administration and this infantile approach they have to governing, which is to break, wreck, and do everything you can to destroy what is there. With, as far as I can tell, I haven't seen them build a single thing, and I don't have an expectation, unfortunately, that Secretary Kennedy has the ability or capacity, as he's fired everyone who knows how to build, that he's
Right.
going to be able to build anything sustainable or valuable either.
Absolutely. It is very concerning. I'm wondering what you make overall of the administration's, lack of policy coherence, and what can you do about it as a senator? How can you make sure that, RFK or whoever, comes after him in this administration, gets on board with making sure that we can keep Americans healthy, that we do have science-based evidence in place?
You know what? I think that it's been important for the public to be engaged in what we're seeing, which is why we are trying to educate the public as much as possible. So they have to understand exactly what we're talking about. When we talk about the devastating cuts, we do mean cuts to cancer research. We're talking about concerns about the cure to ALS, Alzheimer's. We're talking about the disabilities community, the sheer ignorance that is coming out of this particular administration regarding autism. So I think it's going to be most important for us to speak in very specific terms about what research has been disrupted and about what harm might happen. But how we build it back, which I think is the crux of your question, is going forward. Well, what do we do to make sure that we're able to continue in these areas? I wish I had a really great answer for you. I think we're going to have to fight like all get out
Yeah.
through lawsuits. Some of the lawsuits that have been filed by institutions like John Hopkins and others. I think those lawsuits are going to be critically important. And I do think that we are going to see the public in some places that are unexpected when they realize these cuts are going to hit home with some people. There are
Right.
people who are waiting for cancer trials. I heard about a person, Senator Patty Murray conveyed a very compelling story in our hearing last week, where a woman who had been waiting to enter a cancer trial was
Mhm.
notified on the eve of her beginning it that she couldn't, because of all of the cuts, and that her beginning of her cancer trial was delayed for at
Oh
least
my
4 weeks. That's life and death for a lot of cancer patients, to wait 4 weeks to to be admitted to a cancer trial. So I think that, some of the people who voted for Donald Trump are going to feel the effects of some of these careless decisions and policies. And those people, I think, are going to speak up. And I'm hopeful that it's going to make a difference in time to save some lives, because I think people are going to die, quite frankly, as a result of this man's sheer incompetence, his indifference, and the just the cruelty and ignorance that we're seeing.
Yeah, so much of this is life and death in so many ways. And the carelessness that you mentioned, can you talk about his stance on COVID and the vaccines that are out there? I know you've been very critical.
Well, he made a comment, and I don't want to misquote him, but the comment was to the effect of his kind of, there's a conspiracy theory, let's put it that way,
Mhm.
regarding COVID that he has not cleared up about. He questioned the origin of it, and he's made some really dangerous and ignorant comments. And the same has been true about vaccines. If you think about how irresponsible it is for a public health official, in the midst of an unprecedented outbreak of measles in our country,
Right.
we are seeing people have died now of measles. It is unthinkable that we are bringing back an illness that we thought we had cured. We have at least two children who have died of measles. We're
Right.
seeing the outbreak, and rather than encouraging people to have their children vaccinated and to provide the protection that could save their lives, he's hemming and hawing and putting out, misleading information about these untested methods they can use for measles. So he is continuing to perpetuate the kind of ignorance regarding vaccinations that's going to cost lives. And think about how wicked it is for him to do that, even though he has vaccinated his own children.
Right. Right. And he also said, Senator, that no one should be taking health advice from him, but that is literally his job, isn't it?
You're right, it is. And you know what? What that means is that's a disqualifying comment. That's the reason that I filed the resolution of disapproval, is because I don't think he deserves to be in his job. I think he's the wrong person for that job. I think he needs to resign immediately or be fired. And now that we've heard him say through in his own words that we shouldn't have any confidence in him and we shouldn't listen to anything he has to say, I think he should go home.
I think he should go home as well. I
Yeah,
agree
I
with
think he
you.
should go home.
Senator, I'd like to talk about the proposed cuts to SNAP, the supplemental nutrition program that really helps so many Americans be nourished. Can you talk about what those cuts will mean?
Well, you said the optimal word there at the end, nourishment. What human would cut nourishment to human to Americans? Like, who does that?
Right.
And I don't even know. It's like it's so disturbing that we have to make a case for why we should be in favor of people receiving the proper nourishment that they need. But your point is well taken, that children will go without nourishment, that a lot of our elders will go without nourishment. And this is deeply concerning. And these cuts that we are seeing, the cuts that will hurt individuals who need nutritional programming, the ones who are relying on Medicaid, we're talking about millions of people who will be adversely impacted. And again, you think about it, it's the people who voted for this president, some who didn't vote for him, and the ones who did not vote at all. But this is the most callous and heartless thing I can imagine. But it certainly will have, well, let me just answer it a little more deeply.
Sure.
Let's think about what nutrition means, because I can answer it just on this level. Nutrition means for a child that you're able to go to school and focus in school. It means that if you are not well nourished, you in many instances can't learn. And so the impact of not having proper nourishment is really extensive. It means you can't learn, you can't perform in school. It means you will therefore fall behind. And it means that we perpetuate a system of poverty and impoverishment that begins with things like poor nourishment, poor housing, but nourishment is key and foundational to the success of any person, any family, in any community. And so this man can't ever say, the president, that he wants to make America great again. Great for whom and under what
Right.
circumstances?
Right.
A great nation doesn't deprive its most needy and vulnerable of basic nutrition and food. That's not what a great nation does.
It is not what a great nation does, Senator. I want to go back to, you said we need to fight like all get out, and lawsuits can be part of that. But for these cuts that the president and the administration have proposed, for these cuts to be legal, they have to be approved by Congress eventually as part of a rescission package submitted by the executive branch. No such proposal has been sent, from my understanding. And I'm wondering, as a senator, and someone who cares deeply about making sure that we have laws in place that everyone can abide by, how do we make sure that these proposed cuts are considered unlawful? Does that make sense?
Well, you know what? That they are unlawful. That's a great question, Dani. I don't know that yeah, that's a great question. How do we make sure that the cuts are unlawful? Well, I mean, I think the best thing we can do is to encourage my colleagues on the other side of the aisle not to vote for them,
Yeah.
to have their humanity, to really speak to their humanity. And I have to tell you, there are some, as you might have noticed, who are speaking up in this moment, who are saying that they are concerned about some of the cuts. And the cuts we're talking about, for example, to Medicaid, we're talking about depriving over 13 million, close to 14 million people of their health insurance, meaning that these are people who can't get the diagnosis of cancer early enough to save their lives, the women who won't be able to deliver healthy babies, the people who cannot get the health care that they need.
Right.
And so some of my colleagues, rather than thinking about how they're illegal, we need people before this happens to speak up and to have the conscience to vote against these cuts that will harm the people that they love too, and that they represent and care about. It will harm all of us.
Senator, I'm glad you're seeing some Republicans, have a conscience. I wonder if you've been surprised by the number of them who haven't, though, stepped up and criticized these cuts and the administration in powerful ways.
Well, they're afraid. I have heard anecdotally, I don't know that anyone has told me, it directly that they're afraid, but I've heard some of them speak up, at least in the press and other places where they say that they have been threatened, and many of them are afraid to speak up. So I am heartened that the ice is freezing. I'm beginning to hear a few who say this is just a bridge too far, even for me.
Mhm.
And my hope is that more people of good conscience can look at this and realize that this is not at all about Donald Trump. Donald Trump, presidents come and go.
Right.
Let's be clear about that. Presidents come, presidents go. He too will be out of office at some point. But the people of our country, the children, their families, these are the people that we're in office to serve right now. We are
Absolutely.
not here to serve this president. We're here to serve the American people. And the final analysis won't just be the actions of the callous, mean, and irresponsible people that we'll remember, but the silence of good people who are looking at some of this and who know better,
Right.
and who can see differently. And I just appeal to them to do what is right for the people of our country.
Absolutely. Senator, in the short term, I wonder what your advice is to Americans as they navigate the uncertainty and the sort of fear that they're experiencing, and again, the chaos that has been rampant for the last 6 months.
Oh, that is hard. What I would say to them, first of all, is to keep speaking up. And I know that it is really scary for some, but to really continue to speak up, it does matter. We have now heard from a number of Americans that this is not the direction they want our country to go in. They are concerned about the economic chaos, the tariffs, for example, recognizing the increasing cost of goods, soon the cost of housing and everything else. So I think it's important for them to be encouraged to continue speaking out and saying that they disagree with what we're saying. But you know what? I want to give them some advice also, that at some point, some of this becomes too much. I am very concerned about the mental health and well-being of Americans who I believe in some cases are now overexposed to this. You
Right.
cannot watch this and listen to it all day and all night and be healthy. And I'm going to encourage some of them to take care of their mental health. You're going to have to turn down the volume on this a little. It's
Yeah.
okay to turn the television off and go outside and ride a bike or sit on your porch. Let some of the rest of us carry the burden. I can't turn my television off. It's my job to be engaged in it, no matter how ugly it is. But I feel concerned for some Americans who are watching this every day, and it is extremely demoralizing, depressing, and devastating. Turn off some of it, turn it down a little bit, go sit at the table with your family, have dinner. And you know what? We're going to make it through this. We really are. As ugly as it feels and it looks, we're not going to stop fighting. And we're going to win a good amount of these battles that we're fighting. And for some of the things that are broken, we're going to come back and repair it. God willing, we're going to repair a bunch of it. But turn down the volume, and you can't take it in all day.
Such good advice to end on, Senator. Thank you for your service to our country. Thank you for fighting this fight.
Thank you so much, Dani, for having me. Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye bye.